I am not here to talk about a story of sadness, but instead to reflect on how higher education and pursuing a university career can create a generational impact for our loved ones, our communities, and our entire nation. You might see this, and you might also feel this. But today, I welcome you to the invisible, to what is not able to be portrayed. You see, higher education changed me. Higher education did not only give me a sense of hope, but it empowered me and inspired me to understand that I am not a problem, but instead I am part of the solution.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Achieving the Dream, Latinx professional panel brought to you by the Multicultural Center and the Planning Committee for this year's Hispanic Heritage Month. My name is Gigi Canet, and I'm the Multicultural Peer Advocate for Latinx programming this year. Before we begin this program, we would like to start by acknowledging the history and legacy of colonization. UT Dallas stands on land originally settled and occupied by the Caddo, Wichita, and Comanche people. We recognize the history of UT Dallas begins with the forced removal of the indigenous people through the legacy of colonization. This year's Hispanic Heritage Month theme, Más Fuertes Unidos, which translates to Stronger Together, was selected by this year's committee to highlight, especially during a heightened social and political climate, the need for community, and to make a statement that we stand in solidarity with those who need it the most. We understand that when we all choose to link arms with one another and to use our voices to create the change we seek, it is then we are stronger together. Now, I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Ms. Daniela Lopez.
Hello, everyone. Like you just heard, my name is Daniela Lopez, and I'm a senior here at UTD studying marketing. This evening, we have the pleasure of hearing from 5 amazing panelists that are very accomplished in their various professional fields, and they're here to encourage, enlighten, and help us achieve the dream on life after college. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guests. Our first panelist is Teresa Flores, the Senior Manager of Public Affairs for Mary Kay Incorporated, where she develops and recommends policy positions that protect the company's direct selling, product, and global trade interests, focusing on engagement with legislators, governments, and NGOs. She also serves as the Public Affairs Advocacy Liaison for the Americas, which includes Canada and Latin America. A San Antonio native, like myself, and a first-generation college graduate, Teresa received her BA from Cornell University. She likes to spend her free time with family and friends and currently resides in Dallas with her husband, Michael, and their canine companions, Layla, Buster, and Stella. Our next panelist is Arnie Lopez. Arnie is the VP of Global Sales Engineering at McAfee. He is a 25-year veteran in Silicon Valley's technical community with experience in networking, cloud, and security solutions. Prior to McAfee, he spent several years in technology leadership roles with Informatica, Proofpoint, Cisco, WebEx, PeopleSoft, and Target stores. He has a degree in international business from San Francisco State University and has held several technical certifications throughout his career, including CCIE, CISSP, and AWS. Next, we have Fernando Salazar, the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Consultant at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas Healthcare Service Corporation, HCSC. As a diversity practitioner, he is responsible for helping the organization to leverage its differences to maximize potential growth, competitive positioning, and compliance towards innovation, inclusion, interdependence, and excellence. Mr. Salazar's career experience ranges from the Texas legislature, a consultant on Latino communities and at SMU, 11 years of experience in student affairs and leadership development, and 4 years at Dallas ISD with talent acquisition. He holds a master's degree in dispute resolution and conflict management with a certificate in executive coaching from SMU and a certified diversity professional, CDP. Our next panelist is Marisa Solis, the Senior Vice President of Core Brands, Media, Sports, and Partnerships for Frito-Lay North America. Marisa is a magnetic business leader with over 20 years of marketing management, communications, and sales experience in both the United States and Latin American markets. In her current role, Marisa leads all marketing initiatives for an $8 billion brand portfolio at Frito-Lay North America and oversees media planning and partnerships for the snack giant. A graduate of Georgetown University with a BS in International Economics and the University of Texas at Austin with an MBA and MA in Public Policy, she began her career in brand management at Procter & Gamble Latin America in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where she led marketing for brands like Ariel, Downy, and Pampers. She's a member of the Network of Executive Women and has a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo, so don't mess with her. She resides in McKinney, Texas, with her husband Juan and 14-year-old daughter Gabriela. Last and certainly not least, Rafael Martin is the Vice President and Chief of Staff of the University of Texas at Dallas, right here, our home team. Born and raised in Dallas, Rafael attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill as a John Motley Moorhead Scholar and earned a BA in economics. Rafael joined UT Dallas in 2003 to manage the Office of Technology Transfer, becoming the Director of Research Administration in 2004 and the Associate Vice President for Research in 2006. He served as the Interim Vice President for Research from January 2017 to June 2018, resuming his position as the Associate Vice President in July 2018. In July 2019, Rafael became UTD's Vice President and Chief of Staff. The Vice President and Chief of Staff serves as Deputy to the President and as a liaison with campus leadership. His responsibilities include developing policy recommendations, assisting in outreach to the university's community partners and supporters, and providing oversight of human resources, legal affairs, information security, internal audit, institutional equity and compliance, and the UT Dallas Police. So let's go ahead and give them all a virtual hand clap. So we're going to start tonight off with a few questions that our planning committee prepared for the panelists, and then after that, we're going to allow time for the audience to ask your own questions at the very end. So without any further ado, let's move to the first question for the panel. So, how did you come about entering the career or position that you're in currently?
Yeah, do you want any of us to start, Daniela, or do you want to go in a certain order?
I would say anyone could start first, whatever you need.
Okay. All right, so since I'm in sales, I'll start because we like to talk a lot. So I'll get it going. It's an interesting story. So I'm in in sales engineering, as you mentioned, leading these teams for quite a few years. But I actually started my career doing physical security. So I finished college, and then I met my wife and proposed and said I better find a job because now I've got to get married and take care of the family. And I got a job basically printing badges and working at a front desk because that was all I could find at the time. It was a very competitive market. And then I started the computer that made the badges, I started to fix the computer. And then when the IT team, the technical team, and this was working for Mervyn's, which was part of Target, realized, wow, we don't need to bring the IT guys because Arnie could fix it. They said, you should probably be an IT guy and fix computers. And then from there, I started fixing servers and then the network, which was a Cisco network. And then the Cisco team that was selling things to us said, hey, you like to talk. Have you ever thought about being a sales engineer? And I said, oh, sure, I'll try that. Why not? Even though I don't like salespeople, I like technology, so I'll try it. And that was in 1999, and I was a sales engineer in 2000 at Cisco. And from there, I just kept, I decided to get into leadership because I like mentoring people and coaching people. And years later, and there's my dog's very excited about my career as well. Years later, here I am. So a little bit of luck, a little bit of fortune and just being in the right place at the right time. But absolutely love what I do now.
I'll go ahead and take the question next. So my title says Senior Manager of Public Affairs, and what initially that means, or what that means is that I'm a lobbyist. So after college, I had initially planned to attend law school, and I believe I applied to about 8 law schools, and that was my plan A. I assumed I was going to get into law school. I didn't have a plan B. And I recommend that you always do have a plan B, maybe even a plan C, because sometimes your plan A may be delayed or not work out. So ultimately, I was not accepted to any law schools the first time around. And I was in school in central New York at the time. I was not interested in going back home to San Antonio. So subsequently, I quickly pivoted to a plan B, and I left New York. I drove to Washington, D.C. I settled in with friends, and shortly after made my way to Capitol Hill and cold walked into 15 to 20 offices within a day or so. I would walk in, I would introduce myself, asked if there were any job openings, and leave my resume. Cold walking isn't as common now, but I believe it still can make a hell of an impression. Wow. And because I needed money right away, at the same time, I also applied and registered with a staffing agency. And within a few days, I had my first assignment. My second assignment was with a company called Fannie Mae. They provide financing for mortgage lenders and access to affordable mortgage financing. And I ended up working for the company for 12 years in their government relations department. My plan B would not have been possible if I had not reached out to my university career services. I had an assigned mentor with Cornell University and all my colleagues of color at Fannie Mae that quickly took me under their wing when I asked. And by the way, I actually did spend a little less than 2 years working in the IT department when I was at Fannie Mae, and which was not my background before I was offered the position in the government relations department. Huh. I'm extremely grateful to the many people who have supported my path in government relations, and has led to quite a prolific career in advocacy for more than 25 years. So I've been doing this for 25 years, wow. 3 different areas: financial services, which was with Fannie Mae, telecommunications with Time Warner Cable, and then now currently manufacturing, direct selling, and personal care products with Mary Kay, which is headquartered here in North Texas.
That's awesome, Teresa. I guess I'll go next. It's been a journey. I never thought that I would be, leading marketing for these great brands, in such a big company. I went to Georgetown. I studied foreign service. So my path and my dream was to be an ambassador. And I got in the foreign service, and I was about to go in the foreign service when my dean actually, told me not to do it. And when I asked why, he said, if you really want to be an ambassador, what you need to do is go into corporate America, make a name for yourself, one day donate to, some big political campaign, and maybe then you'll be appointed an ambassador, right? That's the way life works. So I took his advice, and I instead went into brand management with Procter & Gamble, as a 21-year-old going to San Juan, Puerto Rico for the first time. I'm from Mexico City, so I'd never been to San Juan. It was amazing, and it opened up a whole world. I had no idea what marketing was or what brand was at the time. Learned a great deal, and after 3 years, I went back to do my MBA and my MPA at UT Austin. I still had the passion for the political side. So I did politics for a little bit while I was in Austin. I worked for a firm there that did political advising for Mexico as well as for Texas. So I worked on several campaigns. Found out very quickly that wasn't the life for me. So went back into corporate, worked for Deloitte Consulting for a while. And then 18 years ago came to PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, and it's been great. It's been, I started out as an associate, doing some brands, and then the career just grew. I did some sales roles, I did some marketing roles, and through time, the responsibility has grown. And now I get to oversee, $8 billion worth of business, which is great. And, every day is a blessing. So it's been a journey, but, I've been very blessed in that regard.
Very good, Marisa. Very good. Just like me as well, the word journey comes to play because born and raised here in Dallas, first generation college student. So born and raised in Oak Cliff in a neighborhood called Acadia Park near West Dallas there, if anybody's familiar. And did undergrad at UT Austin, started at Mountain View College, transferred over to UT Austin, majored in government and minor in Mexican American Studies. As my friend used to call it, the quinceañera major. But it came to work great for me because guess what? I became an expert in our culture, which in essence, all my career path has been Latino this. So I was the Hispanic coordinator for SMU for 11 years, working with the Multicultural Student Affairs Department, doing an outstanding program as you see here this evening, and presenting this to their students and definitely reaching out to students and presenting them the options and ideas. Never would I thought in my wildest dream would I ever end up in a corporate setting with the title of Senior Diversity and Inclusion Consultant for Blue Cross Blue Shield or Healthcare Service Corporation. Because I thought, hey, higher ed was always my play. But then I started looking around and I was like, I need to definitely move up the next ladder. So corporate America became my target. Got my master's in conflict resolution at SMU and was able to dive into HR, which I ended up doing some trips to Puerto Rico on behalf of Dallas ISD. I was recruiting for bilingual teachers. So I was out there in the market looking for bilingual teachers. As you know, the biggest gap in our education system is our bilingual teachers. We don't have enough bilingual teachers graduating in the system to currently fit our population, especially for a school district like Dallas ISD. So did that for 4 years. And then I ended up looking around and my network pretty much, that's what another tool that I had in my set helped me out. And I received a call one day and said, hey, you should consider a position at Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're looking for a Hispanic person within their diversity and inclusion office. And the title was Senior Diversity Inclusion Consultant / Latino Consultant. And I was like, that's the perfect role for me. I get to work with the Latino community. Guess what? I'm an expert in it. That's what I do. And I went ahead and took it, applied, and have been there for 4 years, doing some outstanding work with Blue Cross Blue Shield, definitely with talent pipelining, reaching out to our community and building that bridge. And I've been very, very happy and very successful there as well, making some great impact, but we'll talk about that later on. But just wanted to let you know how I ended up at Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay, so I'll go. Like Fernando, I'm a Dallas native, and another connection. My father actually was a professor at SMU for many, many years in the history department. So I kind of grew up in and around SMU. So as Daniela said, I went to college at UNC Chapel Hill, got a degree in economics. And after I graduated, I actually came back to Dallas and got a job as a management consultant here. Worked with retail and IT clients for about 2.5 years. At that time, when I graduated, it was early 90s, and the country was in a little bit of a economic downturn. And a lot of the work that I was involved with at that time was downsizing for large corporate clients. We euphemistically called it right sizing, but in fact, it was helping our corporate clients figure out how to cut costs, mostly through cutting people. And while I found that work extremely intellectually challenging and stimulating, and the people that I worked with were extremely intelligent and really great folks, the work itself was not particularly satisfying. And I guess as penance for my sins as a management consultant, I decided to switch careers and actually became a paramedic. And I actually worked as a full-time paramedic for about 6 years. Moved back to North Carolina with my then wife, so she could go to graduate school. And worked as a paramedic, supporting us as she was in graduate school. And then I went back to graduate school to get a master's in environmental management and an MBA from UNC Chapel Hill. I'll just say this about being a paramedic. I tell people all the time, it is the best job that I will ever have in my entire life. There are few things that are as satisfying as knowing that at the end of the day, you have done your best to help make your community be a better place. That's a great feeling to be able to have at the end of the day. The other great thing about being a paramedic, which I'm sure some of the folks on this panel can relate to, at the end of the day, when you turn the keys to the ambulance over to the next crew that was going to relieve you, your work was done. There was nothing that you could do. There was no email to check. There was no project looming. You were done, and you could be done with your job until the next day when you had to show up and take the keys from the on duty crew. That said, it's a tough career for somebody who is married and wanting to start a family. There's a reason that divorce rates are so high in first responding careers. And so we decided that I needed to find something a little bit more stable and friendly for raising a family. So we decided to move back to Dallas. And at that time, I had a few contacts at UT Dallas and found out that they were looking for a manager to really start up the technology commercialization operation at UT Dallas. And that's really how I got my foot in the door. Mm-hmm. And the rest, they say, is history, just kind of taking on additional responsibilities. Academic administration is an interesting career in that there is no, you don't go to college and get your degree in research administration. Nobody who is in that career studied to be a research administrator in college. And so you really have to learn on the job. You really have to learn from your peers. You really have to build relationships. And that's what I really have enjoyed about my career in academia thus far. As Daniela mentioned, in July of last year, I became the Vice President Chief of Staff. As I'm sure you're familiar, about 6 months later, COVID-19 hit the United States. I became the COVID-19 czar for our university at that point. And much of my job since that time has basically been managing our response as an institution. Just let me say, if I could, to those students who are out there, to our students at UT Dallas who are out there listening, thank you all. You have done a great job, following the guidelines we've put in place. The number of cases we've had on campus is extremely low, and a deep debt of gratitude from the university community is owed to you all. So thank you.
Well, those were some pretty amazing stories that they heard. And if there's one thing that I could say that some of your stories reminded me of, is the saying that goes, rejection is redirection. So thank you for your words of wisdom. Alrighty, so our next question will be, how do you navigate the terms Hispanic and Latinx in your workplace?
Should we go in the same order or change it up? We can stay in the same order. Yeah, great. Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think often the words are used interchangeably. In the workplace, I think one of the advantages that I heard some of the other panelists mention, and I've certainly realized, is that the fact that we speak a second language in Spanish has helped all of our careers, right? And that's been the case for me, even if I wasn't in a global role, which I'm in now. If I was running a team in the US, if they needed someone to speak Spanish, I was able to do that, which is great. So for me, Hispanic has been more about the language and the fact that a lot of us originally came from Spain. If you think of the history of South America and Central America and Mexico and others, I look at it that way. I more embrace the term Latino because I think it's more diverse and more inclusive of everything that we do. And to me, that's really all about our culture. And that's what when I speak to, students like we are today, or in other capacities, I say embrace our culture, right? Sometimes people like to say, oh, that's a stereotype about Latinos. Well, it's a stereotype, but embrace the positive ones too, right? Like our passion for things is great. Our sense of family, our love for music and food too. Unfortunately, as I get older, I try to avoid as much of that, but it's so good. But those are the things that make us really good, I believe, at work and at home. So, to me, that's really, I tend to gravitate more towards the Latino terminology, but I understand the Hispanic one too, because it's more about language. But that's how I've explained it in my career.
Yeah, I guess I would say, as a marketer, it's important. It's very important because the words you use matter, when you're trying to engage with the community. And so we've been doing a lot of education actually on the origins of the word and what the words mean and, where they came from. And so we tend to use Hispanic because it's historically, the word that we've used, it does refer to all, Spanish speaking. It includes Spain. Even we had a whole debate, inside our organization and whether Spain was included or not. But what I will tell you about Latinx, it is a term that is embraced very much by the youth. It's a younger term, it's a Gen Z term, and many of our brands, that is our key target, right? When you think of a brand like Doritos, our core target audience is Gen Z. So that is a word that resonates very strongly with that generation. It is, as you guys know, rooted in, LGBT also, because you want to recognize, kind of the term as it is. And so we want to embrace that community as well. So we use both words, again, depending on the context, right? Who we're talking to, what the message is it internal or external? Is it a brand that's speaking or is it corporate that's speaking? So we kind of use both, to be honest. And I've learned a lot as to the origins and what the words mean and what it means for different people. So it's a really interesting debate too.
I also use both terms and in the workplace as well. But I self-identify as Latina or Mexican American. I do suspect, however, that I will find myself using the Latinx identifier more and more for many of the reasons that Marisa mentioned.
Hi, this is again Fernando with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Just wanted to say, definitely in the space and diversity and inclusion, we use all three terms. So definitely where we are, right? Like Marisa was saying, with the context of the audience and how we use it. And it also varies by region. For example, Blue Cross Blue Shield has 5 different states. That includes Illinois, Montana, Nuevo Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. So guess where the trend is for Latinx at the moment? It's up north. It's not down here in Texas. Everybody in the meetings, every meeting that I attend, everybody says Hispanic or Latino. If I go to a meeting in Chicago, guess what? Everybody's saying Latinx. So it varies. And when I first started doing research on the term, I got to get credit to UTD. I reached out to the student in the multicultural office. So they provided me with insight on Latinx, because Latinx was not a word that I used when I was at SMU. In fact, I was able to change the term from Hispanic student coordinator at SMU to Latino student coordinator, just because to keep up with the times. Obviously, we're seeing the trend now more towards Latinx. And of course, it's being more an inclusive term, non-binary, and it's very helpful as far as making it easy for the branding. Now, depending where you sit, if you were to ask me, hey, Fernando, are you Latino? Are you Hispanic? Are you Mexican American? I identify with all of those terms altogether. In fact, occasionally you'll hear me say I'm a Chicano. So, it just varies who you're talking to in your audience. Just know this, though. When it's time to identify or present yourself to a certain community, you got to really know what the term means. So in other words, don't use Latinx just to sound cool. You got to know the backing and the historical context of that. And that's something that I think we need to address with the Latino community, because right now people are asking us, so are you Latinx? Are you Latino? What's going on? Hispanic? For example, at Blue Cross Blue Shield, we haven't changed our BRG to being Latinx. Right now, we're still called Latinos for Advancement. So there is talk within the BRG and interesting conversations. And again, depends who you're talking to on how that conversation is going to go. So I just curious to see what the students have to say about it when it's time for the Q&A session.
So I identify as Hispanic, mostly because my father is from Spain. And so I'm glad to hear from Marisa that I'm not kicked out of the club at Frito-Lay, at least. But one of the things that I think is common amongst Hispanic and Latin cultures, and I know this kind of having grown up, traveling to Spain quite a bit. My father was from southern Spain, from Sevilla, and there is a common thread of a mixing of cultures, a mixing of races, throughout the Hispanic and Latin world. Certainly, you see it in Central and South America and the Caribbean nations, where you have, indigenous peoples and the Spanish immigrants and the Black peoples that were brought from Africa during the slave trade. In southern Spain, you see a huge mix of kind of traditional Northern European peoples, but for centuries in southern Spain, Arab peoples populated that portion of the country, and you see it in the architecture, you see it in the culture, you see it in the cuisine, you see it in the language even. And so that, for me, when I think about Hispanic or Latinx or Latinos, it's really the commonality for me is this mixing, right? Is this joining together of disparate of peoples and cultures and kind of making this beautiful kind of mixture that defines Latin and Hispanic culture.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. All right, our next question is, are there any challenges you have faced throughout your career? And if so, how are you able to face and overcome them?
Yeah, I'll start this one again. Unless someone else wants to jump in, please stop the sales guy if the sales guy is talking too much at any point. But I always highlight this as one of my biggest challenges in my career because it was also a source of my greatest inspiration, right? And I think a lot of people will probably relate to that. I think that's pretty common with a lot of folks that have had success in their careers. But it was early on in my career. I mentioned I started off on the operations IT side, and I had a manager who I will leave the names out of the conversation for obvious reasons. But I decided to apply for the next level of a role in technology. This is when I was with Mervyn's, which was part of Target Stores. And at that time, the policy within our organization was your current manager had to sign your resume before you applied to the hiring manager to apply for a new position. So I went to him and said, hey, I think I'd like to take my career to the next level. I'd like your support. Would you sign my resume? And he said, you're not ready. You don't have the skills. You don't have the technical skills. I don't want to sign this. And I said, well, I'd like to take my chances, and I'd appreciate if you would sign this. So he did. He wasn't happy about it. And I interviewed, and obviously I got the job. But I was very intimidated because here was my manager who I highly respected telling me, and I was already fairly intimidated because, as many of you know, if you look at current stats and regardless of what newspaper you read, Latinos in technology is a very low population, right? Anywhere between 5 to 8% or so, again, depending on the stat that you read. So most of the people that I worked with were not Latinos. And so I was already intimidated to begin with. And then my boss said, I'm not ready. But I took it as a challenge to continue and interview. And I did well. And I studied a lot and prepared and stayed up all night for getting ready for my interviews. And I got the job, and that took me to the next level, which, then, as my earlier story said, it took me to, learn the technology really well, and then led to a career at Cisco and beyond. But to me, that was the biggest challenge, because I could have easily said, no, boss, you're right. I'm probably not ready. Never mind. I'll take this back and just stay on this team. But I decided to take it as a challenge, and I'll never forget his name, although I won't share it here, because I always think back and say, I'm so glad that he challenged me and said that, because that's what really got my career started.
I'll go next. So all of my challenges in the workplace are related to one thing, or two things: worry or fear. Fear to speak to senior leadership, fear to ask for help, fear to speak in a public environment like this, fear of voicing my opinion, and those challenges actually relate directly to the next question, which I'm going to combine the answer here. It's a question on the intersection of cultural and gender identity and its impact, not only on my career but my mental well-being. So I'm going to go ahead and answer both. At the core of my fear lies this myth of not enough. Probably like some of you, I was raised in an extremely strict household where my conditioning was deeply ingrained in Mexican culture and I suppose gender beliefs. And the messages that I received ranged from being called lazy, insinuations that certain behavior would result in me being a whore, accusations of being disrespectful if I spoke up, being called stupid, and punished either physically or verbally if I dared to bring home a B. And so for many years, I carried with me a deep-seated fear of what I'll call, the grown-ups. And, a few ways that I overcame this challenge was working to turn my fear into an advantage, and I still do that. I over-prepare, I rehearse over and over. And let me tell you that the times that I've decided to wing it, it's been very obvious. So I try so hard not to do that. I focus on understanding, the senior leadership that I'm dealing with. I observe how they treat and talk to others. And this makes me better prepared to interact with them and their staff. And as y'all all know, fear is a defense mechanism that is meant to keep one safe. So I now use that feeling to control, the worry, the things that keep me up at night, and make plans, and sometimes taking several deep breaths is all I need. I'm probably taking deep breaths right now. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you for sharing that, Teresa. Oh, go ahead, Fernando.
I would say that's really good perception, the way you presented it. With my current role in diversity and inclusion in the corporate setting, of the fear factor of not getting people aware of the current culture of being Latino, right, and talking to them, but also empowering the employee base to go and further and push the envelope where things are needed, right? So, for example, there's not enough talent gap in bilingual nurses for the moment. We can't find enough bilingual nurses. Kind of the same story I already have with bilingual teachers. We have that other talent gap of IT, which is right now what I'm currently working with other organizations to kind of cover. So bringing that forth, that case to higher ed, as far as getting everybody to the senior leadership and getting them to buy into it, has been one of the biggest challenges overall. Where they're kind of like, well, do we want to spend that much money on this particular conference, and how is it going to benefit us, right? The words you always hear, what's going to be the return on investment? So like Teresa, I had to always prepare and get it going and make sure it's presented correctly. If not, guess what? It's going to fall apart. And when you wing it, they can tell, and definitely it shows. So that's one of the challenges, at least pushing the envelope. And that's been my perspective overall. The other challenge is, the way I see it is educating our Latino community to go ahead and go further. It's kind of like they, especially talking to students in high school, talking to students in elementary or middle school, they kind of don't see that beyond factor of what's going to happen next or how they can advance themselves. The good thing is now we have all these great schools that are offering P-Tech, for example. They're offering dual degrees, all this stuff. All those great tools are available for our community. The problem is our community is not applying or doing it to actually take advantage of them. So it's up to us, I think, as leaders to go back and teach them that we can actually take place and move further.
Thank you for sharing that. I was going to share that probably the biggest challenge that I've overcome throughout my career is finding my voice. Finding my voice as as a businesswoman, finding my voice as a Latina. It's tough, right? And Teresa, thank you for sharing the fear, because when you're a young 20-year-old and you're out in the world, it's a very real fear, right? And I remember specifically working in politics. It is a tough world. And I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. My family didn't really have much. And I remember specifically in politics, people saying, what do you have to give? You have no pedigree. You don't, you're not from any, family that matters. You're a woman, like your voice does not matter. And that was kind of the early messaging. And I will tell you, over time, what I've learned is 3 things to overcome that. One is I learned to build my inner voice, because your inner voice is so important, right? And I learned to tell myself that I am powerful, that I do have what I say does matter, and that I do add value, and that I built over time. You guys talked about being prepared. I leverage data to help me, right, make my points, to make me credible, and that's built me up over time. But I'd say what's helped me the most is my network of people that over time you build, whether they're coaches or mentors or champions or people that are around you that build you up, that help you navigate, the waters of corporate, that are there to look out for you, that have your back. That's been, for me, the most valuable thing. And I would tell all of you listening, start now to build what I call your board of directors, because every person should have a board of directors. And on that board, you should have a variety and diverse group of people that can help you in any situation, right? That you can call on, whether it's to, help you prepare for a big presentation, or to vent about something, or just to have a shoulder to cry on, because it's so important. And, that's what's over time, I think, helped me, really shape and hone my voice and be successful in my career.
Well, thank you, Marisa. And I'm going to echo something that both Fernando and Teresa said, in terms of fear. I guess my biggest career challenge is, as I mentioned, after I graduated college, I became a management consultant, and slowly realized that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, and that I wanted to make a change. But frankly, who in the hell in their right mind, gives up a career as a management consultant to become a paramedic? I'm pretty sure I'm still the only employee in the history of McKinsey & Company to leave the company and go become a paramedic. But overcoming that fear, and really embracing, that choice that I made, really taught me some very valuable lessons. 2 in particular. One is, humility. McKinsey consultants have this reputation as the smartest guys in the room, right? I mean, there's literally the book, the smartest guys in the room, right? Being book smart, graduating Phi Beta Kappa had no impact whatsoever on my ability to deal with some of the things that I had to deal with as a paramedic, right? And guys who, probably barely managed to get out of high school and get their associate's degree to become paramedics, were much better prepared than I was. And I had to learn, recognize that despite all of my education, I had a lot to learn from these folks who on paper were much less educated than I was. And that has been a great life lesson for me throughout my career, is that whomever you deal with, whatever their station, there is always something that you can learn from those people that will be valuable to you, and can help you navigate through your career and through life. The second thing that I think it really helped me recognize was the privilege that I have, the privilege of the education that I had, the privilege of the upbringing that I had, and that not all people have the same privilege, and that my success in my career is not all due to my own efforts, right? It's due to where I started in life. It's due to the relationships that afforded me. And so even though I feel I do work hard and I try to do my best in my position, in every position I've ever occupied, recognizing the fact that I did not get here on my own is extremely important. And I think it influences and it affects how you deal with those that you work with, your superiors and your subordinates. And I think that served me well in my career.
Thank you all so much for your really thoughtful responses. So our next question will be, how has the intersection of your cultural and gender identity made an impact on your career?
I'll kick it off again. For me, I mentioned one a little bit, but I'll just highlight it more. I have two quick stories along that question. One is the fear, and some of my fellow panelists have mentioned this as well. You know, early on in my career, I definitely had the fear. Walking into my first meeting as a network engineer, and nobody else had brown skin like I did in that meeting. It was very intimidating, and what that caused me to do was just work much harder. And I know, many of you talked about like preparing even more and practicing and rehearsing, and that's what I did too, because I always felt like if I said something wrong or if I wasn't, very prepared, they would say, "Oh, it's that Latino guy. He's the only one. That's why he didn't know what we're talking about." So I went out of my way to be even more prepared than I probably needed to be. But that's part of, again, I lean back on some of the beauties of our culture. Our culture is hardworking. We will put in the hours no matter what it takes. And that's what I did. And that, I think, helped me in long-term in my career. And then the second one quickly is also why I love doing things like this, and why I'm so proud of the other panelists as well, is early on in my career, I met a senior VP and a vice president at the company at the time I was at Cisco, a gentleman named Guillermo Diaz, who's now a CEO, and Carlos Dominguez, who's also a CEO now at Sprinklr. But and I ended up meeting them, and Carlos was actually a mentor of mine for a little while. But just in the beginning, just seeing them and who they were, and they were like me, and they were in positions like that, senior VP and a vice president and CIO of a company like Cisco, gave me the confidence to say, like, I'm not there yet, but if they can do it, I can do it too. And I'm hoping that that's what many of you that are tuning in and listening and watching take that away too, that you look at any one of us and you can not only do what we do, but you can exceed everything that you see in this panel as well. And that's how I felt when I saw that. And that was through that intersection of being at work and then being Latino.
Yes, I'll go next. I guess when I graduated, college early on, when you're a young 21-year-old, I was very idealistic and somewhat naive, right? I didn't think really that being a woman or being a Latina was any different than anything else. So I went in full on thinking I'm going to be successful and I'm going to be great. And experienced some very early eye-opening things. I remember being in the Dominican Republic, and it was one of my first really important agency meetings to talk about a campaign. And I was supposed to be leading this campaign, and so I was very excited. And I remember getting in the room, and the head of the agency, who was male, and my boss, who was male, sitting down, and the head of the agency basically saying, hey, why don't you, meaning me, why don't you and, Lorena go out and have a cup of coffee while us men talk business? And it really shocked me. I didn't know what to do at the time. And, of course I said, hey, I'm leading the campaign. So if we're going to talk business, I have to be in the room, right? So I I learned early on to be courageous, but it was one of those things where until you experience it, you don't know the barriers that are out there. And I would say now, you fast forward 20 years and, we're going to talk about COVID in a second, but, one of the things I've learned about being a woman, being Latina, being a woman of color is that we bring such a unique set of skills to the table, and we're so valuable to corporate America. And when you see, especially what's going on now, ambiguity, adversity, chaos, really, we've been there, we've lived it. We bring this resilience, we bring this humility, we bring this empathy that is so good at times of adversity. And we bring a little bit of that stability. And I think that has shown me, just the power of that intersection. And I that's what I love to share, is that, being Latino or Latina has power, and organizations are looking for that. And so it's incredibly empowering to know that after you've experienced, that the early, when it didn't matter. And I think it matters now more than ever. So.
Fernando, you can go ahead since I combined my answer before.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. I have had the pleasure of having the fact that intersectionality of being Latino has been able to empower me in my career moving forward. But at the same time, it has given me the opportunity to empower our Latino community and showcase it to the most brilliant and most beautiful way to our audiences, that whatever company I'm working for, that being said, SMU, Dallas ISD, currently Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's a great opportunity for me to showcase what our culture can do, and more so. At the same time, being able to be Latino and being proud to be Latino. And that's why I always encourage people, if you can, habla español, por favor, because if not, you're going to lose the lingo. I mean, I'm over here at a time where I can speak a couple of words because I haven't heard that word in a while. So you always got to keep it practice. If not, you're going to lose it. And then you got to practice it up again. So please get out there, use your lingo, habla español cuando pueda, en al mismo tiempo, si se puede.
So I guess my response to this question, is, as a cisgendered heterosexual man, it's really hard to say that this, my gender identity has had any kind of impact. In fact, the opposite, right? And it kind of gets back to the point I was making about privilege before. I mean, things are our society is set up for people like me, right? To advantage people like me. And I think it's fair to say too that Hispanic culture, Latino culture, to a great extent, right, has traditionally been about people who have an identity like I do. Recognizing that, owning that, understanding what that means, and the fact that I don't deal with some of the issues that other members of this panel deal with because of their gender, because of the way they appear, is important, right? It's important to me personally, but I think it's important to us as a society, as organizations, right? Because having an attitude that excludes the other types of people that are within your organization is really self-defeating, right? Because there is talent there is passion there, and if you discriminate against those people, you're just shooting yourselves in the foot. But it requires you to recognize that those barriers exist for other people. And the insidious thing is, right, as somebody with privilege, if you don't pay attention, you don't notice it, because everything is just the way things are, right? Because I don't experience those things the way other people do. And so hopefully, the message I'm trying to get across is, if you're like me, understand that that's not how it is for everybody else. And make sure that you make space for everybody, within your organization, because because I think the world is a better place when you do.
Well, thank you everyone for your insightful answers. And, you know, like Marisa and Teresa were saying, I myself definitely do have to be very careful of how I might be coded as a Latina woman in the workplace and how my messages and what I'm saying and what I'm communicating may be received. And, you know, like Rafael said, it's very important to recognize and see the privilege that different people watching this panel might have and help address those types of issues, because the industry needs us, just like everyone was saying on here. So our next question is, what is your proudest career accomplishment thus far?
Yeah, I'll start with that one again. For me, I mentioned, you know, I'm in a leadership role, and when I think my first leadership role was in 2002, and it was at the urging of another leader who said, "Hey, you like to mentor, you like to coach, you're good at developing other people, and you care." And I said, "Oh, I'll try leading a team," because I had also heard some of the negative aspects of leading a team, where you're dealing with people calling in sick, lazy workers, having to hire and fire, and there certainly are those aspects. But what I found is, as being a leader, you really get to develop people. And what I found, and it's, a little bit of the father in me comes out, because being a leader is a little bit like being a father too, because you have, people that are working for you, that trust in you, that admire you, and you're helping them, right? Your kids, you're guiding them to be great adults. With the people on your team, you want to guide them and develop them to be successful professionals. So I share that because for me, although I'm very happy with the role that I have, and the money I've made and the titles I've had, I honestly can say that when I look back at people that I have mentored or that have worked for me or part of my team, when I look at that list, and now I've been doing this for a long time, I'm an old guy here, so been doing this for almost 30 years. I've got a list of people that are CEOs, that run M&A organizations, that are directors, vice presidents, and to me, that is, as a leader, that's what gets me the most excited, and I'm the most proud of. And when I interview for jobs and I'm looking at opportunities, I actually highlight that more so than my own accomplishments, because those will speak for themselves. But if you're going to be a leader, you should have a good track record of people that you've led that have now become successful. That's a true leader. So for me, that's what I'm always most proud of, and I always talk about.
My a couple of things. As a lobbyist, I obviously makes me very happy when we defeat legislation. But I remember during President Obama's last year in office, he signed a bill that Mary Kay and the rest of the personal care product industry worked really hard to pass. And I think he signed it, I think it was December 22nd when he signed it. So I was already home in San Antonio with my family celebrating the holiday. So, I did a little happy, Snoopy dance, because the president of the United States had signed this piece of legislation. Something else that really was a big accomplishment, about five or 6 years ago, I was exclusively just doing state and federal lobbying, and the general counsel, or the chief legal officer, at the time, came into my office and asked me how I would feel to add Latin America to my portfolio, and so I said yes, and then here I was, the lobbyist liaison with our subsidiary in Mexico, in Brazil, and Argentina, and then Peru and Colombia. And so it was just exciting that I got to travel to those places and interact with elected officials from those countries. And then last year they asked me, well, you might as well do all of the Americas. Can we add Canada? So I have Canada as well. And the last 2 years have been very exciting to have Canada and Mexico in my portfolio because of the renegotiation of NAFTA. And now we have, you know, the USMCA. And then one little story, when I was lobbying in the cable industry, my dad finally got, I think, what I did for a living. He called me, and I was in the golf course, at the golf course. And he said, golf, you know, what are you doing at the golf course? And I said, well, part of our relationship management is playing golf, you know, with elected officials. And I think I was in the Napa area. And so I don't know what he thought, but he was really proud of me that I was out there playing golf, and it was a work day, and that's how I was making a living on that occasion. Thanks.
I just wanted to share that, you know, very similar experiences, being able to work in politics and being able to do that as well. Teresa, when I was working, my first job out of college was working for the Mexican American Legislative Caucus and hanging out with politicians and being able to enjoy some golf during the workday, which is, I've totally missed those days. But now, my most recent accomplishments, I can say, has been pushing the envelope on, like we said before, for the Latino community, currently working with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I came on board as a brand new team for diversity and inclusion there for the team. So we were barely scratching the level as far as the D&I space. So I'm glad to say and report that right now we have working towards strategies, and this is creating future pipelining for Hispanic serving institutions and HBCUs. And we're currently working as well, which I got to see today, actually participate in the Great Minds of STEM conference. I don't know if we have any students there, but I'll be there tomorrow. Just a quick plug. Feel free to visit our booth. But yes, I actually got to see that project go ahead and get approved, and we're moving forward to gaining that future pipeline. And then the other project that I'm currently working at work, which I'm very happy to say, is also talking about the uncalled for conversations of the elephant in the room. We call it CDI Unleashed, which stands for the Center for Diversity Unleashed. And this speaker topic, I've been doing it now for the last 3 years on behalf of the company. I invited an external speaker to come talk about what is actually equity and equality, and how does that affect our workforce, or religion in the workplace, or even unconscious bias, which is the most popular one. So those particular topics get put in front of our employees, and we get to get some good interaction, especially in this time that we're currently experiencing with COVID and all the racial tension, and has become forefront of our company. So very proud to see that my speaker series, which was a concept that I thought of because my university role, I said we should do a speaker series, and it came through and got approved and got some, you know, funding for it. I'm able to actually produce that for the company, and glad to see we get some great reactions from our employees about it too.
That's awesome, Fernando. You know, I have to say, It's interesting as a marketer, you know, there's no higher dream, I guess, than, you know, having an ad on the Super Bowl, right? And I've been very lucky to, you know, have worked on 4 Super Bowl spots that have been in the top 10. You know, I always say, oh my gosh, you know, girl from Mexico and from the Valley, and I'm on the Super Bowl, you know, working on Super Bowl halftime show. I mean, those things are really, really cool, right? But I think, like Arnie, the things that make me really, really proud, I have to say, 3 years ago, I was approached by my senior leadership to start a business unit at PepsiCo for Hispanics. And, you know, as we started to look at the marketplace, 60 million strong, you know, biggest purchasing power, you know, Hispanics matter. And our company knew that we needed to do something different to really reach this audience. And they asked me to start this business unit. And the ironic thing is I turned it down initially because I didn't want to be pegged, you know, as a Hispanic. I didn't want that my culture to define the things I did in business. And I had a mentor tell me, you need to do this. It's going to change your life, and not just your career, but your life. And he was so right. The last, those 2 years of building this unit were some of the proudest. We not only were able to set up all the mechanisms in our company to engage Latinos externally, to engage our customers, to help small businesses, but internally we elevated a lot of Latinos, our Latino talent. We gave them roles, we advanced them, we promoted them. And it's so good to see, so many Latinos in so many powerful positions now, because that business case and that business need is there. So I have to say that was the best and proudest, assignment and accomplishment. And it got me where I am now. But gosh, I'm so glad somebody told me to do it. Because initially my instinct was like, no, but it was a mentor that said, this is how you'll make an impact. And so that was the most, to me, the proudest moment.
So I've got a couple of answers. One, kind of hearkening back to my paramedic days, which has to do with, anytime that I got to help deliver a baby, it was just incredible. I mean, it's miraculous. It's just amazing. It's surprisingly messy, but it's a great experience, and something that I will never forget. In my career in academia, I'm really, really proud, like Arnie, of the people that I've helped to mentor and who have developed, into leaders in their own right. And that's gives me a great deal of satisfaction in terms of what I do on a day-to-day basis. But more recently, something that I'm extremely proud of, was that in the wake of the killing of George Floyd last May, a lot of members of our community kind of came to leadership and to the president and said, we need to do more at UT Dallas. Things are not right, and our communities are hurting, and there are things that are not equitable on our campus. And in response, Dr. Benson put me and our Vice President for Diversity and Community Engagement in charge of a task force, which we called the Living Our Values Task Force. And we started meeting weekly on July 1st. And just last week, we have kind of submitted the 8th recommendation from various working groups that we put together back to Dr. Benson to start making some meaningful changes in the way that we operate as an institution, in some of the services that we provide. And that has been extremely tough work, but it has been extremely satisfying work at the same time. And also giving me the realization that it is just the first tiniest step that we need to start taking as an organization to addressing some of the larger issues that we face and that face Hispanic and Latino members of our community, that certainly face the Black members of our community. But I'm proud that we embrace that challenge as an organization, and the small part that I've played in kind of putting us on a path towards what I hope will be a better place for everybody.
Well, it was amazing to see how proud y'all are of the many accomplishments that you've had in your career. I certainly loved hearing about it. So our next question is, how did your company handle the sudden changes that came with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so Danielle, you're aware a little bit because you were at McAfee as well, but I feel McAfee did a tremendous job thinking about not just the employees first, but our customers first as well. So all the offices were shut down, and then our IT organization increased bandwidth and capabilities with some of our collaboration tools like we're using here today. So I thought that was great. And this is especially challenging, as I mentioned. I lead a sales engineering team. So as you know, sales is very much a relationship type of a job. So I'm very accustomed to flying all over the world. I've been to, I think, pretty much every continent in the world, and that's how I, interact with customers and with partners. And it was very hard to change that that method of doing my job. We always did a little bit of virtual because you can't always get everyone in the room, but that was a little bit of a learning curve for a lot of us in sales. But again, I think as a company, McAfee did a really good job of giving us the tools and capabilities to do this. And the good news is all of our customers were going through the exact same thing that we were going through, so they very much understand it. They're okay with a little dog barking in the background, like happened to me earlier today. You just change the way that you do business a little bit in the world that we're in today with COVID. So overall, I've been very pleased. And the other thing that my company did is they gave us everyone a week off. Just say, you know what? Even though you say you're working from home, and people sometimes think that it's less work, it's actually become more work because people realize that I'm not driving to customer meetings or flying. So in some cases, they're scheduling meetings from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it's a lot of work, and then that comes with the territory. But McAfee said, everyone is working so hard. We're actually going to give everyone in the company 1 week off to, spend time with family, recharge, and then come back right at it afterwards. And I thought that was a great thing that they did.
So the sudden changes that came because of the pandemic, and how Mary Kay handled them was, I would say, very quickly. The Mary Kay headquarters, they closed them on or around March 13th. Our manufacturing and distribution center pivoted to essential workers only, and all employees who were working from home, including myself, had the appropriate equipment they needed within a week after the office closure. Soon after that, I think by the fourth week of March, our manufacturing facility, which is here in North Texas, it's actually in Louisville. Our manufacturing facility retooled and started producing hand sanitizer for first responders and other frontline workers. And as of today, I believe that about 85% of our workforce continues to work from home, and that includes myself. I did travel a lot, and I missed it a lot, in the beginning, but I've gotten used to it, and I understand now that when things get a little bit back to normal, I probably will never travel again as much as I've used to travel, and that's all, and that's because of virtual meetings and how successful that has gone for us. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was it was mentioned before about after the tragic murder of George Floyd. Mary Kay really took a stance and made some dramatic changes within the company, and I was really pleasantly surprised. They did the right thing, and one of the first things that they did, Mary Kay did not have a chief diversity officer. We always prided ourselves in gender diversity, and Mary Kay is about being committed to empowering women, but we did not have a chief diversity officer. So we do have that now. We also continue to leverage our long-standing relationships with organizations like the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation in Washington, D.C., and committed, to their initiatives. And then third, we actually have reached out to global organizations who are focused on combating discrimination in efforts to promote equality. I'm not sure, you probably guessed by a little bit of what I've said about the work that I do, but we're a global company. We're in 36 countries around the world. And so when we talk about combating discrimination and promoting equality, it's important that we do it on a global basis. So it was good to know that Mary Kay leadership was listening.
Yes, I can go next. I will just say the last 8 months have been the toughest and yet the most rewarding. I think I've learned more in the last 8 months that I, probably have in my entire career. And that's not an exaggeration. When COVID hit, there was a series of things and challenges that our company faced. The first one, first and foremost, was the safety of our people. So while, yes, we closed our offices and people work from home, we have a lot of essential workers that are in the front line and in our manufacturing lines. And our first priority was making sure they were safe, they had the equipment they needed, but also the support. So, I'm very proud to say our company, did bonus pay for these employees to make sure that they had everything that they needed. They took care of their there was childcare. And that was kind of the first challenge. The second challenge, believe it or not, we're a food and beverage company. And so as a result of COVID, the incredible pantry stocking that took place, our business just shot up. And our manufacturing facilities were extremely challenged. So from a supply chain perspective, we found ourselves having to make really tough choices because we couldn't keep up with the demand for our products for a time, and that's something we're not used to seeing. And so that was a second challenge. And then the third challenge was, as a marketer, if you think about the way we plan, how we communicate our brands, we do it way in advance. So all of our marketing campaigns and advertising that was to come were messages that were no longer relevant, right? There were things like, going to parties or going outside, being in live sports, entertainment and concerts, and all of that shut down. So we very, very quickly had to pivot the way we thought. We had to come up with new campaigns on the fly and be very agile, and very creative. I remember one of the first things we did, and I was very proud. Again, our Doritos brand is all about Gen Z and that generation. And we knew how much they were suffering, especially when you thought about seniors in high school or seniors in college, having to give up some of these life-changing events, right? Your graduation, all of these things. And Doritos sponsored a program with iHeart, and we called it Doritos Valedictorian. And we had people from all over the country submit their speeches, that they would have otherwise given if they had the opportunity. And with iHeart, we were able to air these speeches, on the radio to millions of people, alongside speeches from Michelle Obama and, all these different artists and musicians. And it was such a privilege for those students. And that was such a great program, right? So, we were on a roll, and then, the social injustice hit and the murder of George Floyd, and everything changed. So not only had we pivoted because of COVID, we had to do a second pivot because there were some tremendously difficult conversations that happened internally. I'm sure every one of your organizations and at UT Dallas, you had to go through these conversations around, where we stood. Did we support our employee base? There was a lot of pain that was exhibited during this time, and going through that as a leader is extremely tough. But it taught us that our employees are strong, they have resolve, and our company has always been committed to diversity and inclusion. But we made an even bigger commitment. There was a $400 million commitment that PepsiCo made to the Black community, not only for advancement and retention and recruitment, but for small business owners, for the community. And so that, those were things that made me very proud. But again, it was very fast. You had to think on your feet and, be strong and resilient. Lots of learning, but I'm glad, as we now see the future, I think we can face pretty much any challenge, right? Because we've been able to do that in the last 8 months.
Very neat. Just from Blue Cross Blue Shield's perspective, obviously healthcare, right? Health insurance company, we're the 4th largest in the nation. We did a quick pivot as well, and I pretty much say about 80 to 90% of our current essential workers are still working in the office. But from our essential workers' point of view is our customer service representatives. So obviously we're getting these claims, everybody's getting tested, everything else is going through. That's what the write-up has been so far. Luckily for the company, I was very impressed how well we managed it. We were able to get actually a once a week CEO call and also once a week CEO message, letting us know what's going on with COVID nationwide, but at the same time, how's it affecting us directly and how's it affecting our customers and how we can serve them better. So that's definitely one thing that was very impressive with Blue Cross Blue Shield. The other thing that was very interesting, at least from the diversity and inclusion point of view, is having our BRGs still be active, especially in the virtual environment. It was kind of difficult at first because everybody's so used to doing social events, doing activism programming, what have you, community service. But I was very impressed how a lot of our virtual community service events were actually being handled by our BRGs, and they stepped up. And that being said, very impressed with what they've done thus far. So overall, a very smooth transition into what we have experienced with COVID. A lot of support from the company as well financially. There was also some stimulus checks given from the company to ensure the success of our workers and as well as our essential workers. So luckily, we have been able to be very successful and been working from home, which has been a really great privilege, at least for me, since I have 2 little ones. And right now I am experiencing the virtual schooling as well. So it's been quite interesting.
Well, I'll be brief, given that we're talking mostly to UT Dallas students, so you guys know exactly how we responded to COVID-19. Going completely virtual. We extended spring break a week last spring, and didn't come back. Essentially, we pivoted to an entirely virtual, education delivery model, which, if you had asked me, a year ago, how long would it take us to pivot to being an entirely virtual teaching organization? I would have said 2 years minimum, right? I mean, universities are not known as being the most nimble organizations on the face of the planet. They're not super tankers. It's like trying to turn a train that's on the tracks, right? I mean, you're gonna have to pick it up and put it back down, pointed the other direction. But we did it, much to the credit of our faculty and the flexibility of our students. And we have continued in that vein, essentially providing our faculty and our students the choice as to whether or not they want to engage in the classroom in person or online. And I think that has served us extremely well. I hope our students feel the same way. What we are faced with now is we still do have a substantial number of students resident on campus, and we have, for safety and public health reasons, restricted a lot of what normal campus infrastructure, normal campus events would be for a lot of those students. And we're hearing now from them about the need really for them to have more opportunities to socialize, to have more opportunities to interact with one another. And we are working towards providing more of those opportunities in a safe way for them, for their mental health. It's just not normal and it's not healthy for college age kids to be kind of confined to their dorm rooms 90% of the time. And so we're working towards making more opportunities available for them.
Well, it was really great hearing how y'all's companies handled the COVID-19 pandemic. And I must say, as an intern at McAfee this summer, that week of vacation we got was awesome. And the communication that we got was also really great as well, because there is never a moment of uncertainty in regards to if our internship was canceled or not. And since I'm here, obviously it wasn't. And we definitely really appreciated the communication that we got. And I know that y'all did too, especially as established professionals. So my next question for y'all is, do you have any advice on how to best navigate professionalism during this major shift in working from home?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's tied to I think all of our earlier answers. I think there's while certainly coworkers and customers and partners and students are much more flexible now, and you're okay with a kid running by the screen or a dog's barking once in a while. I still would say for all of you listening in, that doesn't mean that you can now attend a meeting or prepare for an interview any differently than you would if you were going to the office and meeting face to face. Put the same time and effort into, dressing the part. And Rafael, you outdid all of us with the time. I should have worn the tie too.
Don't ask me to stand up, Arnie. Okay, let's just give it that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You and me both, brother. Exactly. Yeah. But seriously, dress the part. If you're going to interview, if you have a presentation for class, dress the part. Don't show up in a t-shirt and a t-shirt or a hat. Handle it the same way you would if you were going to be there in person. Now, if you're, little brother or someone, or the dog barks or something happens, people will understand. But be ready and still play the part and be as professional as you can. And I'll do things like my dogs were barking, but they were outside of the office. If I know it's a very important customer meeting, I put a little gate up. My wife will help me. She'll help me keep the dogs quiet. You do some things in preparation for those types of meetings. So that would be my advice. Don't slack off on the professionalism just because we're virtual and we're doing it from home.
I certainly agree with that. Something that I've taken advantage of, working from home and I guess more or less having some extra chunks of time, use this time to learn a new language. I cover Brazil. I speak Spanish, but I don't speak Portuguese. And in Portuguese, I guess one of the reasons it's difficult for me to learn Portuguese is because I know Spanish. So take the time to learn a new language, new skills. And you know what? Let me go back to the language thing. If you speak more than 2 languages, I will hire you. So, keep that in mind. Knowing more than 2 languages is very important. Anyway, get healthy. Take advantage of the many free online webinars and seminars that are available to you. I've also done a lot of that. Thanks.
One thing I would advise is probably take that deeper dive into your network. So networking doesn't stop just because we can't go to meet up at a certain place or what have you. Join your organizations, like, for example, professional organizations like Alpha, SHIP. They have some great and outstanding webinars that are nationwide that are available to you as a member. So definitely join these organizations, do the webinars, network afterwards, obviously stay after and meet with them, meet and talk to different people, and expand as far as your network as much as you can right now. Also develop your skill set any way you can, enhance it, especially if you're about to graduate, you're looking to be in the market pretty soon. Guess what? This is the perfect time to do a lot of practice interviews, mock interviews, talk to different people as well, how that looks like, and look out there. The other thing I would highly advise, if you're not looking at internships, guess what? Right now is the perfect time for an internship, especially for the next year. So right now, for example, at Blue Cross, we're looking for interns already for starting up for the next summer. So this will be a good opportunity to start looking what's available for you, what applications, and that way you can step your foot forward once you're able to get out there in the market.
Yeah, I think I would just echo everything that's been said already. It's really important, as Arnie said, to stay professional. I would make sure you have a place where you can be in the computer that's like your corner, that, you know, that looks professional, that is kind of your space, because it gets you in that, you know, in that mode. And you know, I would echo what Teresa said. If you have time to, you know, learn something new, learn a new language, learn a new skill set, I would encourage you to do that. And the last thing is, you know, I hear a lot of people saying it's hard now because you're not face to face. It's very hard to connect with people. You know, turn that on its head, because now we have the ability to connect with anybody, anywhere, across the globe, right? And we're so connected now that we're virtual, that I would take the opportunity to really expand your horizons, you know, whether it's beyond Dallas, beyond the university, because now you can do that at the touch of a button. And, you know, your world can really, really open up. So I would take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, I would echo, you know, what folks have said. I would also just add in just kind of a practical note, which is, you know, I don't know if others find this, but I find myself, you know, scheduling, because it's virtual, right? When I was at the office, and if I had to go meet with somebody, you'd give yourself that 15 minutes to walk from your office to their office, right? In the virtual world, it's like you end one at 11 and you start the next one at 11:01, and you know, if you don't schedule yourself a little break in there, you know, you're going to get yourself in trouble at some point. So I would just say, you know, be intentional. You know, understand that, you know, taking little breaks is a good idea. Don't sit in front of the screen all day. Get up, move around, because otherwise you're going to end up like me, you know, 51 years old, and I'm like, my knees are creaking when I stand up out of my chair because I haven't gotten up to exercise or just walked across campus like I normally would.
Well, don't say that just yet, Rafael, because I'm 21 and my knees are creaking already. All right, well, why don't we open it up to questions from our beautiful audience of other UTD students out here together. So UTD students, give it a go, and I'll start reading off the questions.
And will you be sending the students our contact information?
So Mr. Bruce just said if you would like us to, and if you would, you know, give us the permission to, we will.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that way, if we don't get questions this evening, they can reach out to us.
So since some people might be typing, I have a question for y'all, since I've been very excited for this panel. So what advice would you have to us, the Latinx students, to get our foot in the door, to get our career started? And anyone can go in any order for this one.
Well, definitely reach out to us now. Don't wait until, you know, you're getting ready to graduate. Keeping up with, you know, developing, maintaining relationships is so important. I mean, that's what I do every day. And right now, it really is so much easier to do it, because we are, you know, we're virtual, and I don't know, it has become very easy. So just, you know, just reach out to us.
Yeah, I would say, you know, do your research and know what you want to go out there and do, right? Talk to people that are doing the job you'd want to do, and get to know really what it's like, what the day-to-day is like, and make sure it is something that, you know, you're going to want to pursue. And once you decide what that is, then yeah, definitely reach out. to people in that industry, people in those companies, because reaching out matters, right? And we remember when somebody is proactive and, ask questions, we remember that. Seek internships, even if they're free, right? And they're not paid. I know sometimes it's hard to do that because you have to, you have to continue living and you have to earn a living, but sometimes, you get an unpaid internship and you have the ability to get in the door and prove yourself, and later down the line, get that paid position. So that's another way, to get your foot in there.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments. I think everybody mentioned networking earlier throughout the conversation. It's so important. And I would say again, to some of our earlier comments, prepare, right? If you reach out to someone, you reach out to any of us and say, can I, buy you a virtual cup of coffee, which, most people will take that meeting, do a little bit of homework, with things like LinkedIn and social media, look up the person that you're going to meet with. I mean, you probably know who they are, but dig a little deeper. What's their background? Where have they worked? Where are they from? If they're, public social media, find out a little bit about them socially, right? Nothing like breaking the ice with saying like, hey, I see that you're a Liverpool football fan, right? In addition to being, the vice president of sales engineering at McAfee. It just breaks the ice and makes the conversation so much easier. And, me personally, and I'm sure my fellow panelists would agree, we pay attention to that. It means something that someone did their homework, did their research, and came prepared for those, even if it's an informal conversation.
I agree with everybody's comments. If you haven't fired up your LinkedIn account, this will be the perfect time to get it started, especially get it out there, because guess what? The recruiters, I work with talent acquisition a lot, and we always look at our LinkedIn first. That's pretty much our first line after we start recruiting, just to get to know the student, to see their background. And like everybody's saying, internships, and we've been saying it before, that's definitely a great place to start, and start going and getting your foot in the door and seeing what's out and work that network. Once you discover exactly what you want to be doing, like we'd already heard, you should just be able to do that as well and make that connections and keep them going. Don't stop attending these particular sessions like you are here this evening. I think if this is the first one you've ever attended, I would encourage you to please continue to do so and build that network.
Yeah, and I would just say as well, that it's not all about, the skills you may have. As I mentioned, like nobody's going to school to become a research administrator. So when we were hiring in the research office, we looked for people who had the right attitude, who we knew could learn quickly, who could take direction well. And if you can convey that in a discussion and a conversation with a potential employer, that's going to go a long way. We know that you're not going to have all the skills that you need to be successful within our organizations right out of college. We understand that there's a learning curve and some training that'll have to happen. Demonstrate to us that you have a thirst to learn, that you can learn quickly, and that you're just generally a hard worker and a curious person. That's going to go a long way, especially in entry level positions.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question from David in the chat, and he's asking, with being a college student, I had to deal with imposter syndrome even now. Have any of you had to deal with it, and how have you overcome it?
Yeah, I would say, I deal with it, gosh, every day, all the time. You go through these thoughts in your head, gosh, I'm not supposed to be here. I am, I'm in this massive company, I'm leading this business. How did I get here? Of course, those thoughts come in. I said earlier, for me, it really has been about developing my inner voice and making that inner voice my own champion. So, whenever those thoughts come in, and because they do all the time, it's I think it's nature. When that fear comes in, it's being able to have your inner voice say, I belong here. I belong at the table. I have valuable things to contribute. And every one of us has a magic power. I believe that, And it's just, you got to find it, nurture it, and then unleash it to the world and show it every time. And the more you do that, the more that imposter syndrome goes away. It never goes away completely. It happens, you know, it just comes. But I think you learn to deal with it and you learn to overcome it.
Yeah, I would agree with Marissa's comments. It never goes away. I'm 51 years old and been doing this for a long time and have had some success. I still, you know, walk into a meeting sometimes now virtually and say, I can't believe I wasn't born in this country. English wasn't my first language. I was raised by a single mom, and I have, you know, almost 400 people that are looking for direction from me in this, you know, incredible company with a great salary and everything else. And it just feels very weird. But again, I have to just remind myself, I put in a lot of work, as many of you will. And I think it was Rafael or maybe Fernando, or we all, I think, mentioned this a little bit, staying humble, right? That's a good thing, because I always say, stay humble and stay hungry. Hungry for your career, hungry for information, hungry for knowledge, but always stay humble. Don't take your title or your role, because I'm sure you will all be very successful in your careers after you leave school. But that humility is what will keep you, you know, pushing forward and feeling confident when you have those days when you walk in and you're like, wow, do I really belong here or not? That's a good feeling, because it'll keep you hungry.
I'll you know, be even more direct. The hard work that you do has to include a lot of hard work on your mental health. If you do not work on your mental health and keeping it healthy and keeping it sane, it's not going to work out for you. Marissa mentioned something, you know, about developing, you know, your inner voice, which is something that I'm working on right now. You know, the imposter syndrome also includes thinking that someday someone's going to figure out that you're not as smart as you say that you are, or as smart as you act. And that with time, you have to work on turning it around and making sure that voice that you have inside your head, you know, that you have, you think about courage, you think about, you know, having compassion, maybe even being curious. It's a lot of work, but it can be done. So since everybody's saying their age, you know, I'm 49 years old, and it's still tough out there. But the fact that whoever the student was that asked, the fact that you asked that question now, that is a big deal. That's the first step, because you know, you can take care of this issue at any point, but you don't want to be my age starting to do that work. If you're doing it when you're 18, 19, 20, you know, you're on your way.
Most definitely. And, you know, the good thing is getting help early and getting some advice and finding the right mentors. That always helps out with your network. So know that you're not in it alone. That being said, you can do that balance board and you can talk to different people, but balancing is going to be key. Like we like to say at Blue Cross Blue Shield, we always like to say, bring your authentic self to work. That being said, bring who you are and know who your worth is. At that point, that will help you, or at least we try to see, that will help most people kind of eliminate that imposter syndrome, because they have that fear factor. You always hear the term as well, fake it until you make it scenario. You know, don't do that. If you can, just know your stuff, go with it, and you should be able to do well.
Yeah, and I would just add quickly, you know, it's more often than not counterproductive to be comparing yourself to others, because you don't know what, you know, how those people got where they are. You don't know, you know, what effort or lack of effort they put in to, you know, to achieve what they achieved. They may have been somebody who started on second base, got a base hit, and thought they hit a triple, right? I mean, it's just you've got to know yourself, as Fernando says. Know yourself, be confident in yourself, and just make sure that you are making yourself better every day, that you're improving yourself. The rest will come. The rest will come.
So my good friend Gigi is asking, I am a healthcare management major and I would like to know what advice Fernando has on entering the healthcare field.
Hey, Gigi. I just would like to say, visit our career page. For one, definitely we have plenty of openings in different areas and expertise. Healthcare management right now is a hot field. You can definitely go into it. Just like myself, I'm in a D&I field. Guess what? There's D&I jobs popping up left and right, as mentioned before in this particular panel. So healthcare in itself, especially the starting point, you want to definitely look for at least the entry-level job, and most of them will be with the care unit or customer service piece. After you go from there, the good thing is getting your foot in the door to a corporation like a Blue Cross Blue Shield and being able to manage your way to the next step. The good thing as well, I can mention real quickly, we have a lot of learning and development skill sets being built right now for Blue Cross Blue Shield. We call it Blue University. So once you become an employee, you actually get to go to different tracks and different levels to help build your skill set and move on to the next level within the company. So get your foot in the door. That's one thing I would encourage. Apply. Don't like we're trying to say here, don't deny yourself from not actually applying. Get your foot in the door somewhere, and then from there you'll be able to move up.
So David is asking, Jose is asking, as a first-gen student, oftentimes we don't have the same resources as other students. Therefore, how can we distinguish ourselves from others when applying to internships or full-time roles?
The fact that you are a first-generation student, that in itself is a distinguishing factor. One of the reasons we are asking all of you to start developing relationships now, and use us, us five as a starting point, is because, there's going to be a time where I'm going to be able to tell your story as well. There might not be a position at Mary Kay that you are interested in, but there will be another position in another company. And if I know who you are, and I can pick up the phone and call Marisa and say, hey, there's this student, getting ready to graduate. Being first generation, at least, when you look at this group here, for us, that stands out. That stands out for us, I think.
Most definitely. Definitely being first gen, like I said earlier, I'm first generation, and don't let yourself kind of like put yourself in the box and say, for example, I can't do this because of this. Like mentioned before, I didn't take any unpaid internships because I couldn't afford to do so, right? You have to work, you have to pay for your books, you got to do that. But if necessary, especially if it's going to help you out with your career, please take that chance, because you never know, it's going to help you out at the end. The other thing too, is the fact that you're attending here this evening. That's the first step. And like Teresa said, you have the connection now. All of you right here that we have present, that's your network now. Please use us and please contact us and we'll be happy to help.
Yeah, one thing I want to add, just to build on what Teresa said, I think we're all pretty much first gen, first college. And speaking from experience, coming from a place where, my family didn't have the resources. I was very blessed to have been able to go to the college I went to. But there's power in your story. So there's power in your story. There's power in where you came from. And I can't emphasize enough how the new normal of today, the skill sets required aren't necessarily, the hard skills. You'll learn that on the job. There's skills around humility, like Rafael said, empathy, dealing with ambiguity and adversity, being resilient. I'm sure all of those things are things you've lived in your story and in your life. And if you can bring those and make that come to life, you're going to be so extremely valuable, because that's what we need right now, is people who can handle, who are curious, who are hardworking, who can handle the chaos, and, you know, bring organizations forward. So share your story. It'll be powerful.
All right, and we have a question from Gabrielle in the chat. Looking back at the struggles you've gone through, would you trade those past struggles to live an easier life, or would you decide to go through all of it all over again? And why?
Yeah, I shared my story, but I wouldn't change anything at all, regardless of where I am in my career. I think you will all run into challenges and struggles in your life and your careers. You know, there's no question about it. It's how you react and how you overcome them that will define who you are as a person and as a professional in your career. So, you know, you always come out stronger afterwards. And I know those sound like cliches, but you know, if you remember my story, that's a real story of someone telling me you're not good enough and don't even apply, and me saying, you know what, screw you, I'm still going to apply, sign my paper, and I'm going to get that job. You know, you need to have that mentality. And so would not change one thing in my career or my life.
Yeah, I would agree, Arnie. The history of humanity, if you look at every great piece of literature, every great piece of film, it's always about people overcoming adversity, and that's what shapes them, right? That's what shapes us as people. So, you know, saying that you wish you could go back, yeah, I mean, you go through painful experiences in your life. We all do, some more than others, obviously. But those are the experiences that really define who you are. You know, and when you get to, you know, my age, our age, and you look back and you can realize that it's not, you know, I don't look back fondly on some of the experiences that I've had, but certainly I understand now that they have made me who I am and given me what I have now.
I certainly wouldn't change anything. I think the fact of moving forward and keeping going, like mostly just thinking back of all the challenges that I have experienced, and I can go back to high school when the high school counselor said, "No, you're not going to make it at UT Austin," and guess what? I did. So it's, you know, pushing it forward and keeping it forward. That's definitely what you want to do. But also another thing that I would suggest is paying it forward and going back to the community and passing forth the torch to help out others. So definitely using the struggles that you have seen accomplished, but also paying it forward.
You guys pretty much said what I was going to say. I don't regret a single day. I think we have a gift on the panel, which is, you know, the gift of having lived all those years, which, you know, you don't have yet, because you still have, you have to live that life. Gosh, but when I look back, the best times were the worst times. And when you're in it, it sucks. But gosh, when you look back, you're like, all that you learn, and all that you take with you. And the one thing I would say is, what I do now is make sure I share those mistakes and share those hard times, so that hopefully people don't have to go through them again, you know, and they can get there faster. They can overcome obstacles quicker because of the things I've learned, right? I need to parlay that learning, but embrace it, man. If you go through troubles and chaos and adversity, embrace it, because it's the gift. It's a gift of chaos. There is a saying, you have been given the gift of chaos. Use it wisely.
All the above, and I plan to. There's a lot of nuggets that Marisa and actually the rest of you gentlemen as well have shared, but the chaos one, I'm going to keep that one.
All right. Well, that was our last question, everybody. Let's go ahead and give another round of virtual applause for our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy, very corporate, very professional days to come and just talk to a bunch of regular old students like us. So before we end our program, we want to encourage everyone to take our survey and tell us what you thought about today's panel. We also want to take this time and remind everyone in the audience today that we have 2 more programs that you have to be at. Next week is our Más Fuerte Contigo Ally panel on Wednesday, October 14th at the same time, same place. And next Friday, October 16th at noon is the Hispanic Heritage Month celebration, which is our very last event of our Hispanic Heritage Month celebration here at UTD, with various student performances and our wonderful guest speaker, Dr. Jose Luis Zelaya.
Good call.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and we hope you have a great night and an amazing weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I am not here to talk about a story of sadness, but instead to reflect on how higher education and pursuing a university career can create a generational impact for our loved ones, our communities, and our entire nation. You might see this, and you might also feel this. But today, I welcome you to the invisible, to what is not able to be portrayed. You see, higher education changed me. Higher education did not only give me a sense of hope, but it empowered me and inspired me to understand that I am not a problem, but instead I am part of the solution.
Si el ritmo te lleva a mover la cabeza, ya empezamos como es. Mi música no discrimina a nadie, así que vamos a romper. Toda mi gente se mueve, mira el ritmo como los tiene. Hago música que entretiene. El mundo nos quiere, me quiere a mí. Toda mi gente se mueve, mira el ritmo como los tiene. Hago música que entretiene. Mi música los tiene fuerte bailando y se baila así.
La fiesta no para pena conmigo.